There's a moment in life where the greatest action you can take is none at all. Not out of defeat, laziness, or apathy, but from a deeper place of awareness, presence, and trust. In a world obsessed with hustling, fixing, and striving, stillness can feel like rebellion. Yet it's in that sacred pause, in the quiet refusal to chase or control, that the universe begins to align. We've been conditioned to believe that more effort equals more reward. That if something isn't working, we must try harder, push further, do more. But what if that belief is precisely what's keeping us out of flow? What if trying to force the river is why you're always swimming upstream? This is not about abandoning your dreams. It's about releasing your grip on how and when they should arrive. You are not failing by resting. You are honoring the unseen rhythms that guide all things. The Stoics knew this well. Epictetus, the former slave-turned-philosopher, once said, "Seek not for events to happen as you wish, but wish them to happen as they do, and you will go on well." He wasn't advocating for passivity. He was teaching us the difference between effort and attachment. There is wisdom in action, but also profound power in acceptance. Sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is stop. Stop overthinking, overdoing, over-explaining, and simply allow life to meet you. The idea may seem radical, especially if you're used to solving problems by force, but life often works like a bow and arrow. The more you pull back into stillness, the more momentum you generate when it's finally time to release. Think about how many times you've chased something, love, success, peace, only to watch it run further away. The truth is, the more desperately you pursue something, the more you confirm its absence in your energy. And the more you broadcast lack, the more lack mirrors back to you. This is not punishment, it's alignment, it's feedback. You're not being denied, you're being redirected. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most powerful men in history and a devout Stoic, captured this idea with simplicity. If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment. You see, control is often an illusion. The only real control you have is over your interpretation of what's happening. Let that sink in. When you drop the illusion of control, you create space for wisdom to enter. You stop reacting and start responding. You stop clinging and start trusting. You begin to embody the quiet strength of someone who knows they are held by something greater than their to-do list. So what does doing nothing actually mean in practice? It means not rushing to fix discomfort the moment it arises. It means observing your thoughts without obeying every urge they demand. It means trusting that silence has a voice and that clarity comes not from noise, but from stillness. It means stepping back, breathing deeply, and letting the answers come to you instead of running toward them in panic. It means resisting the ego's craving to prove, push, or please, and letting your spirit lead instead. This is not passivity. This is spiritual maturity. This is energetic mastery. Remember Seneca, another wise Stoic, taught, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." We waste time not just in distractions, but in mental resistance, fighting reality, doubting our worth, obsessing over timelines. So much of life unfolds naturally when we simply stop interrupting the process with fear. Try this. Next time you feel lost, confused, or uncertain, don't force a solution. Don't scroll for answers. Don't seek validation. Sit, breathe, be with what is. Let discomfort teach you. Let silence support you. Trust that not knowing is a sacred part of the journey. You may find that the right person calls you. The opportunity you were chasing appears. The clarity you were begging for arrives effortlessly. Why? Because you stopped pushing and started allowing. Manifestation doesn't come from desperation. It comes from resonance. And you can't resonate with something you're anxiously chasing. You resonate with it when you become calm, aligned, grounded, when your frequency reflects peace, not panic. When you stop trying to make life happen and start letting life reveal itself, everything changes. You notice synchronicities. You become magnetic. You no longer need to chase because what's meant for you begins to find you. Stillness is not stagnation. It's a return to your natural rhythm. It's an energetic reset. It's your soul remembering its original state. calm, connected, complete. This is not a call to abandon ambition. It's a reminder that not every part of the journey requires movement. Some phases are for receiving, not doing. Some chapters are about learning how to be still with yourself, trusting that your inner work is doing the heavy lifting. And when you stop resisting the silence, it starts speaking. It says, you're already enough. It says, you're not behind. It says, you don't have to chase what's already on its way. The Stoics would agree. They practiced presence not as a luxury, but as a necessity for peace. And they knew, as you will come to know, that life has a way of unfolding perfectly when you stop trying to control the script. So the next time your mind says, do something, ask yourself, what if the most powerful thing I can do right now is nothing at all? Because in that sacred stillness, everything begins to fall into place. In the language of Carl Jung, what you're experiencing isn't failure, regression, or a loss of motivation. It's a holy pause, a liminal space, a quiet but powerful in-between, where your soul retreats not to escape life, but to rewrite its myth. It's a place outside the noise of productivity, outside society's expectations, and beyond the ego's need for constant affirmation. And yet this space terrifies our culture. Modern life is built to avoid the silence. Jung warned us about it, how society will pathologize, numb, distract, and even medicate this phase of deep inner transformation. Why? Because we've been taught that transformation must look like forward motion, that to grow means to be visible, to be rising, achieving, producing. But this space you're in, it isn't dysfunction. It's not a step backward. It's initiation. It's not clinical depression, even if it shares some shadows. It's your soul refusing to keep participating in a life that no longer aligns with its truth. It is the quiet breaking apart of an identity that was built on survival, performance, and external validation. Jung called this process individuation, the sacred journey toward becoming your most authentic self. Not the self shaped by society, but the one hidden beneath it. Most people don't talk about this phase. They speak of awakenings, breakthroughs, and epiphanies, but rarely do they mention the quiet that follows, the stillness that descends after the light, the ache that comes when the old fire dies, and no new flame has yet been lit. But that silence is not emptiness, it's gestation. If you can learn to stand still in that space, not rushing to fill it with distractions or false momentum, you may start to hear something deeper. You'll hear the quiet voice of your inner self beginning to take form, uncoiling from the shadows where it's long been buried. This stillness isn't demotivation, it's the seed of alignment. The world might say you're lost. Jung would say you're being reformed, shaped by a more honest truth than you've ever known. You're undergoing a psychic reconfiguration, one that has no language in the modern world. It doesn't just change your thoughts, it changes the entire architecture of who you are. The goals, ambitions, and visions that once gave you energy may now feel flat, distant, even absurd. Not because you failed to reach them, but because the self who wanted those things no longer exists. And Jung foresaw this long before it became a trending topic. For most of your life, you lived through the persona, the social mask. You crafted it to fit in, to be admired, to be accepted. This persona wasn't wrong. It was part of your psychological development. As Jung said, the persona is a system of behavior imposed by the expectations of society. It helped you navigate the world, but it was never you. When you awaken, you begin to see the mask for what it is, a performance. The applause no longer satisfies. The external success feels hollow. You realize that what once fueled your passion wasn't authenticity, but a deep need to be seen, valued, and safe. Now, the script you used to follow, the 5-year plan, the motivational quotes, the hustle, no longer resonates. It feels like trying to read lines from a play you no longer believe in. There's no inspiration because there's no self behind it anymore. Not the old self, at least. But here's the truth. You're not aimless. You're just in between selves. You didn't lose your ambition. You outgrew the fuel that once powered it. That inner emptiness you feel? It's not a void to be filled with noise. It's a sacred space, cleared, softened, and waiting for something truer. Something born not from performance, but from presence. The ego demands, but the soul waits. And in that waiting, something holy begins. Jung believed that the purpose of life was not to glorify the ego, but to integrate it, to bring it into alignment with the deeper self, the center of your being that is connected to all life. Individuation, he said, is the lifelong process of becoming whole, of reconciling the parts of ourselves we've hidden, denied, or disowned. It's not about becoming someone impressive, it's about becoming someone real. The ego wants achievement. The self wants truth. The ego wants approval. The self wants integration. When you feel lost, it's often because your inner compass is being recalibrated, not to meet expectations, but to express your soul's deepest values. So if you're drifting right now, if the world feels far away and nothing lights your fire anymore, know this: you are not broken. You are undergoing a sacred shift. Your nervous system is unwinding from years of survival mode. Your inner world is shedding its false layers. The identity that once helped you navigate life is dissolving to make space for a more aligned version of you. And yes, it's disorienting. There may be days when you want to go back, to pick up the mask, to chase something just to feel the rush of momentum again. But you'll find, even if you try, that your soul won't let you. Not this time, because the stage is gone, the lights are off, the audience has left, and all that's left is you. This is where individuation begins, where you no longer chase the image of success and instead begin the quiet, radical work of becoming yourself. Not the self that gets praised, but the one that feels true in your bones. There is nothing wrong with you. You are not failing. You are remembering. The next chapter will not be written by the old mind. It will rise from the stillness of your spirit, and it will require no mask, only your truth. This is a deeply powerful piece exploring the post-awakening void, individuation, and soul embodiment through a Jungian lens. Here's a paraphrased version in approximately 1,000 words, incorporating references to three Stoic philosophers, Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus, to bridge the spiritual and philosophical dimensions. After a spiritual awakening, the human psyche doesn't leap into a new version of life with immediate clarity. Instead, it often pauses. This isn't a failure to evolve, but rather a necessary reset, what Carl Jung would describe as a sacred recalibration. The old sources of motivation, status, validation, productivity, begin to lose their power. Things that once thrilled you now feel strangely hollow. This isn't regression, it's refinement. Your inner system starts rejecting everything that feels false. That includes careers built on insecurity, relationships shaped by societal roles, or even visions of success once driven by fear and inadequacy. This isn't a breakdown, it's a purification. It feels liberating, but also confusing. You're letting go of illusions, but what remains when the mask falls away? Jung warned that the modern world has no language for this phase. Our culture worships constant movement, growth, and visible progress. Stillness is pathologized. Yet this in-between stage is not laziness or apathy. It's a sacred initiation. This state resembles what Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, hinted at in his meditations. Look within. Within is the fountain of good, and it will ever bubble up if thou wilt ever dig. The spiritual pause isn't emptiness. It's a wellspring preparing to flow in a more authentic direction if we have the courage to stay present and listen. Jung cautioned that many never make it through this threshold. Some bypass the discomfort by spiritualizing avoidance. They float above life, labeling everything as illusion to protect themselves from feeling. But true spirituality doesn't demand escape. It requires embodiment. The self does not want to withdraw from life, but to live through you authentically. This in-between state, the one that doesn't trend on social media and resists the polished language of manifestation, is a liminal space. It is the sacred pause between identities, the chrysalis between the caterpillar and the butterfly. You're no longer who you were, but not yet who you're becoming. As Jung said, you are not failing, you are in transition. Seneca, another Stoic thinker, would recognize this moment. In his writings on adversity, he reminds us, difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body. The void may not offer answers, but it trains your inner endurance. It teaches you how to remain centered when life offers no applause, how to stay whole when nothing makes sense. This is spiritual resilience, the fortitude of the soul. In Jungian terms, you're encountering the phenomenon of enantiodromia, when energy taken to its extreme flips into its opposite. You've burned brightly in ambition, now you collapse into introspection. Not because you're broken, but because balance is being restored. Your old drive, fueled by ego, is dissolving, and in its place, a deeper movement is being born. This process mirrors what Epictetus taught: no man is free who is not master of himself. The old motivations weren't rooted in freedom, they were survival strategies, ways of earning worth through doing. But once your soul awakens, those strategies stop working. And that collapse is not your failure, it's your liberation. In this stage, the shadow begins to rise. You're not malfunctioning, you're finally quiet enough to hear the parts of yourself that were silenced. Grief, rage, unworthiness, all surface, not as enemies, but as messengers. Jung's model of individuation demands this. He believed that we must integrate, not repress, our shadow in order to become whole. You cannot ascend without first descending. The ego will resist. It craves clarity, action, a plan. But the self whispers, let go. It doesn't rush. It forms slowly, like roots growing underground. And that stillness, that uncomfortable silence, is where your real transformation is unfolding. Our culture doesn't honor this kind of evolution. The hustle and achieve mindset sees pause as defeat, but the psyche knows otherwise. It is metabolizing years of internal noise, unprocessed wounds, and external expectations. And that requires rest, stillness, patience. This stage is not paralysis. It is a sacred incubation, a gestation of a new identity, not built on applause, but on authenticity. The energy that eventually emerges from this pause is different from the frantic striving of the past. It is quieter but deeper. No longer driven by fear, it hums with purpose. This is not motivation born from anxiety or insecurity. It is a soul-led impulse. You act not because you need to prove your worth, but because it would be dishonest not to. Jung called this the emergence of the self, not as a lofty ideal, but as a grounded, embodied compass. It doesn't chase, it calls. And it calls you not toward status, but toward wholeness. So if you find yourself in this strange, still space, this quiet void where nothing seems to move, understand that you're not lost. You are shedding a life that was never truly yours. And what feels like demotivation is not failure, but alignment. Like the Stoics, Jung saw this process not as something to fear, but as the very path of becoming. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it." Similarly, the stillness you now experience may feel distressing only because you've been taught to equate worth with motion. But it's in the stillness that your deeper compass emerges. Let this be your chrysalis, your cave, your sacred cocoon. Stop judging your pause. It is not the end. It is the threshold. You are not broken. You are between identities. You are not confused. You are being reformed. And if you can learn to trust this space, if you can resist the urge to explain it away or escape it, you will discover that the self has been waiting all along. This is the real work. Not chasing success, but embodying truth. Not performing for love, but radiating it from within. Not hustling to become, but remembering who you already are. Jung called this individuation. Marcus called it alignment with nature. Seneca called it self-mastery. Epictetus called it freedom. Whatever name you give it, it begins here, in stillness, in silence, in sacred pause. And what rises next will not need to be forced. It will rise because it is real. It doesn't arrive with thunder or spectacle. It comes softly, almost imperceptibly, a gentle inner rhythm, a subtle awareness that doesn't urge you to return to your old life, but beckons you to create something entirely new, something not yet seen. This is the soul's first true whisper. not spoken in words but sensed in feeling, in subtle pull, in quiet presence. Carl Jung referred to this as the symbolic life, a mode of existence not dominated by the ego or societal expectations, but one attuned to the deeper stirrings of the soul. In this space, you're no longer living for approval, status, or safety. You're living for truth, for meaning. And the moment you allow the ego to step aside and make space for the wisdom of the unconscious, life begins to shift. It stops being about survival and becomes a slow, meaningful unfolding, a sacred dialogue between you and the invisible architecture of life. And here lies the irony. This transformation rarely looks extraordinary from the outside. In fact, it often appears quiet, even mundane. But the inner experience is radically alive. When the self begins to guide your path, you're no longer scrambling for validation or hustling to keep up. You stop acting out of the fear of missing out and begin responding to the gentle tug of something deeper, an inner congruence that replaces urgency with calm. Clarity stops being a trophy to chase. Instead, it arrives quietly, often cloaked in simple things: a conversation, a dream, a quiet knowing that doesn't demand explanation. Living from the self doesn't mean every day is lit with energy or certainty. Human life is textured. Fatigue, sorrow, and uncertainty still ebb and flow. But what fades is the ache of pretending, the silent exhaustion of performing a version of yourself that no longer resonates. Something within you begins to realign. You start creating without needing applause. You say no even when the world expects yes. You follow curiosity rather than checking boxes. You start choosing peace over perfection, wholeness over hustle. This isn't laziness. It's a new form of energy, not fueled by anxiety or external pressure, but by inner coherence. Not driven by adrenaline, but by alignment. Not rooted in fear, but in presence. Jung called this a return to the symbolic, to live not through fantasy or escapism, but by reconnecting with the depth of your own soul. In this space, you begin to trust again. You start listening to your dreams, your gut instincts, the symbols that show up in your life, the synchronicities that once felt like coincidences, but now feel like conversations. Your existence becomes a living dialogue, not a desperate monologue shouted into the void. You begin to feel part of something larger, something unseen but profoundly alive. This way of living changes your questions. You stop asking, "What should I do?" and begin wondering, "What is gently calling me?" You let go of rigid plans and start noticing where life seems to be leading you. You stop trying to prove your worth and begin tuning into what feels innately true. Life is no longer something to conquer. It becomes something to dance with. Ambition doesn't disappear. It alchemizes. It becomes devotion. Devotion to what is real, what is resonant, what makes you come alive. And from that devotion comes great movement, not frantic or forced, but rooted and sustainable. Your actions are no longer motivated by the need to be seen or applauded, but by the deep impulse to express what is real within you. To create because your soul cannot not create. To speak, teach, heal, or serve because your entire being says yes. Not because you should, but because it's who you are. So if you've been feeling lost after awakening, if you wonder where your spark went or why everything that once lit you up feels so distant, know this: the flame hasn't died. The old fire had to burn away to make room for a deeper, steadier flame. One that won't go out when the winds of life get strong. One that doesn't need to roar because it doesn't burn for attention. It burns for truth. Jung never claimed the path would be easy. He didn't promise that the soul's unfolding would be comfortable or linear, but he did speak of depth. And if you're reading these words, if you've felt even a faint recognition stir within, you are already on this path. This is not the closing chapter of your awakening. It is the threshold of your becoming. If something in this reflection echoes your own experience, you are not alone. Perhaps you've met that rare soul who feels like home, or maybe you are still journeying inward, finding your way back to your own essence. Wherever you are, your story matters. Even unfinished, it may serve as a light for someone still wandering in the dark. Your voice could be the very signpost someone else is quietly praying for. And if someone you care about is caught in the painful illusion that love must be earned through sacrifice, that peace is only for the worthy, or that self-abandonment is the cost of connection, send this message to them. Remind them that real love does not demand we shrink to fit, that true connection does not ask for the silencing of the soul, that the most sacred relationship we can ever form is the one we nurture with our own inner truth. Before you leave, I invite you to stay connected. Subscribe and turn on notifications. Here we walk beneath the surface, into the undercurrents of the psyche, the symbols of the unconscious, and the relational patterns that mirror our own becoming. In this space, we don't offer easy answers, but we ask better questions. And we walk each other home. If there's something you're moving through, something you're curious about, or something you've never spoken out loud, share it in the comments. This space is not just content, it's communion, and it lives because of you. Your voice is not only welcome here, it is essential. Thank you for showing up not just to this video, but to your inner work, to the sacred labor of remembering who you truly are. And always remember this, when the right person appears, your soul will know, not through fear, but through peace. But until that moment, let your most intimate relationship be the one you cultivate within. That is the foundation. That is the home. And from that wholeness, all things real are born. Until next time, I'll see you on the path.